WWE Raw and the top 5 reasons why WWE Raw is horrible. This was supposed to be a WWE Raw review, but man, I watched Raw last night and my goodness. Like, I wanted to quit so many times, but I stayed with it because I said, you know what, man, I got to do a review tomorrow. I'm going to hop on with it. I'm going to stay with it. But this is not a review. Woke up this morning, I was like, you know what, man, nothing important happened around. I'm about to just say how I really feel about the show and how I really feel about the show overall. So top 5 reasons why WWE Raw is horrible. Number 5, we're going to get right on into it. Feel free to hit that subscribe button, by the way, as well. Number 5, it's 3 hours long. And you know, I'm not going to bag all the way on WWE Raw because sometimes they knock it out of the park, but most of the times we get what we got last night, and it just felt like they phoned it in. But it's 3 hours long. Most of the time, not just talking about just wrestling, but shows in general. When I see a show or a movie that's 3 hour long, the runtime is 3 hour long, the first thing I think is, oh man, I don't want to watch this. So if I'm watching a wrestling show that's 3 hours long, and for those 3 hours, it's not enjoyable for the most part, then it's going to be a drag amongst wrestling fans, amongst me, amongst all wrestling fans. Because if we're looking at a drag that's 3 hours long, for wrestling, you know, if it's a pay-per-view that's 3 hours long, that's one thing. We're talking about just the regular show, weekly. That's 3 hours long. It is tough to watch week in and week out. 3 hours is just a drag. This is not the Attitude Era anymore. It's not the Monday Night Wars anymore with the 3 hour shows you can flip back and forth. You can't flip back and forth anymore because it's just one wrestling show on Monday nights. So 3 hour shows are tough to deal with. Moving on to number 4. There are a lot of dead spots in Monday Night Raw, and look, I get it. It's a 3 hour show, so it's tough to just knock it out of the park on every single segment. We're talking about 3 hours here, so I understand it, but we usually get that dead spot, and it happened again last night. Usually get that dead spot at the top of the last hour. Look, I know when it's 9 o'clock, it's rolling around toward the last hour. I know that, okay. We're about to get that spot. We're about to get those back-to-back spots to where we get a bunch of segments to where nothing matters. So once we get to the last hour of the show, it's a real drag in the beginning because it's like, man, these are dead spots in the show with characters I don't really care about, and I'm gonna get to that later as well. We get to a lot of dead spots in Monday Night Raw. So that's number 4. Moving on to number 3, it's not simple. It's not about wrestling. Look, when I go on to Tuesday nights on SmackDown, look, sometimes they have their bad shows, but the majority of the time, most of the time, it's really good because they keep it simple. They're not perfect, but it's mostly about wrestling when SmackDown is good. When we get a wrestling heavy show on SmackDown, it is just wonderful. And that's just not a thing that we can pawn off and say that, oh, that caters toward the internet community. No, that caters to everybody. When a wrestling heavy show is on, it's normally a good show for WWE. And Raw is not usually a wrestling heavy show. The times when there are wrestling heavy, Raw is pretty darn good. So I think that they should look at that. Wrestling heavy shows are not just the motto, like I said, to cater to a certain audience. Wrestling heavy shows cater to everyone. So, I mean, when it's not wrestling heavy and it's a drag, it's just hard to get invested into. And speaking of investing, number 2, the characters, the wrestlers are devalued. Look, it's hard to get invested into wrestlers when they continually get involved in 50-50 booking or bookings where that just makes you shake your head, scratch your head. It's like, man, why are we even here? Look, for one, if we go back, when we were feeding all the wrestlers to Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns in order to build up to the big slate of matches between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, I said at the time, man, we are devaluing a lot of wrestlers here. We got to be careful with that. And also throughout that time, I also thought that, you know what happens if Roman Reigns gets a big injury? Then what, man? We got a lot of devalued wrestlers here. And unfortunately, the unfortunate events that have happened with Roman Reigns, and like, here we are, we sit here, and I'm not putting all this on Roman Reigns. Don't get it twisted. Or Brock Lesnar, don't get it twisted. Because we look at wrestlers that are in storylines right now, and we see it. Like, these are guys that are devalued. So when you try to put them into important spots, it's like, well, I don't care about the character, man. I can't get invested. Like, when they try to do something with Finn Balor of importance, like, I can't get invested into it. As much as I like that guy, Finn Balor, whenever he's on TV, I can't get invested because I don't care about the character, because they have devalued him so much. At this point, just another example, the Revival. If they try to do something important with the Revival, I'm not going to care 2 cents. At this point, I want them to send the Revival back to NXT, for goodness sakes. Like, there are so many wrestlers that have that story on Monday Night Raw to where it's just way too hard to get invested into them. So that leads me to number one. The number one reason why WWE Raw is horrible. It's too hard to get invested into the storylines because the characters are devalued. The storylines, you can't get invested into them. Look, they try to run these storylines, and trust me, I get it. You know, you're just trying your best to put forth an interesting product, but you've devalued the wrestlers so much to where when they get out in the ring, I don't care about the storyline that they're in. Bobby Lashley, he's showing his behind, literally. Like, I can't get invested into whatever storyline we got going on with Lio Rush and Bobby Lashley. You look at Elias, for example. The guy's over like Rover with the crowd, but every time he gets into the ring, it's nothing important. It's the same old Elias is playing guitar and he gets interrupted by somebody. They never put a meaningful storyline into play with Elias. So whenever they do try to put him into a meaningful storyline, it's going to get hard to get invested into because they never do anything with the guy from the start. And I just told the story of Finn Balor. I can't get invested into any type of storylines with Finn Balor. There are only like a handful of people on Monday Night Raw that feel really important. Like your Dean Ambroses, your Seth Rollins, your Braun Strowmans, even though they've messed up his face run, tried to turn him heel and then flipped him back face. At least they involve him in meaningful stuff. And guys like Drew McIntyre, and maybe Dolph Ziggler. Those are the guys that feel really important. I could be leaving some other guys out as well, some ladies out as well. Well, the only lady, in my opinion, that feels important on Monday Night Raw is, well, Ronda Rousey. Because I can't get invested into anything else they're doing with any of the other ladies on Monday Night Raw. So, I mean, it's hard to get invested into storylines when these characters when they try to put these characters in important spots because they've been devalued so much. Therefore, that devalues the storylines. So those are my top 5 reasons why WWE Raw is horrible. Don't get me wrong. Every now and again, WWE Raw hits one out of the park and it's like, man, that Raw was pretty darn awesome. So, I mean, we have those times. And I gotta say, just recent weeks ago, I think the Raw where Dean Ambrose turned, I can't remember, but I think that one was a pretty good Raw. So we have those times where it's really good. But for the most part, we deal with what we dealt with last night on Monday Night Raw, where it was just bad segment after bad segment after bad segment. So those are my reasons. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about Monday Night Raw? Do you think I'm too harsh on Monday Night Raw? Let me know down below, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Twitter at OMGCoreyB or at the number 2 Sweet Pod. That's 2 Sweet Pod. Let me know.